It appears to be that time. So says Mickey. Okay, we're gonna do call to order and pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation. Thank you all and welcome tonight. And we'll do roll call, Miss Jody.
Osborne,
Here.
Bentley,
Here.
Lund,
Here.
Euler,
Here.
Kushner.
Here. And then we'll do the approval of the minutes from 11/28.
Move to approve.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes. And adoption of the agenda.
Move to adopt.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
And next we have,
Say yes.
huh?
Say yes.
Yes,
Yes, I'm sorry.
thank you.
Maybe I won't say yes. Next, we have a couple proclamations. So we'll start with. Let me find it. Oh, there it is. Mr. Swanson. Gary Swanson, Employee Recognition Proclamation. This is Gary Swanson of our IT department. He's the one that keeps you contacted and everything going. Geez, there's some people in the back of the room. Might have known.
I saw them.
Whereas Gary Swanson is a valued employee of the city of Warrensburg in his role as senior computer technician since May 6th of 2013. Boy, that's been a while. Whereas Gary has been a conscientious and trustworthy employee and his skill and dedication behind the technologies which power our modern world have had a valuable effect on the efficiency and morale in the IT department. Whereas under Gary's leadership, cybersecurity strategies have been instituted, including continuous monitoring, user training to spot phishing emails, to strengthen cybersecurity skills, two-factor identification protocols on server sign-in, and the future deployment of encrypted emails. And whereas in a proactive effort to combat cyber attack, IT Technology launched a 30-day video training module for employee awareness during the month of October in the No B4 console for cybersecurity month. And whereas Warrensburg's rate of exposure was less than 5% as compared to the industry standard government entities exposure of 15%. And whereas IT Technology has made a huge difference in our cybersecurity as evidenced by our insurance rates, Warrensburg is one of the 2 cities out of 65 cities to see a decrease in their cybersecurity liability insurance from 2022 to 2023. And whereas Gary's critical role is recognized in managing and maintaining the city's essential network systems and applications powering our digital experiences. Now, therefore, I, Jim Kushner, the mayor of the city of Warrensburg, along with the members of the city council, would like to thank Gary Swanson for his dedicated service to the city of Warrensburg and recognize the critical role and significant contributions in the excellent performance of his profession.
I don't get like the month of December, the Gary Swanson month, or
Just said if I don't show up till about tomorrow. Thank you all. Thank you. And we have one more. Miss Rachel Denfeld. Guess you didn't know either, huh? Rachel Denfeld, Employee Recognition Proclamation. Whereas Rachel Denfeld is a valued employee of the city of Warrensburg in her role as senior accountant since December 11th of 2006. I don't know, that long ago.
It is.
Whereas Rachel has been a conscientious and trustworthy employee, and her dedicated interest and devotion to her job have had a valuable effect of efficiency and morale in the finance department. And whereas Rachel's critical role is recognized in managing and maintaining the city's financial procedures, including general ledger, payroll, budget, and bank account oversight. And whereas early in the week of November 7th of 2022, Rachel's attention to detail prevented a check fraud committed against the city in the amount of $68,000, which went undetected by bank personnel. And whereas the city's check was intercepted, washed, and cashed in the state of Georgia. And whereas Rachel routinely reviews debits and cash checks and noticed an unfamiliar vendor name on the image of the check and verified it did not match the vendor number. And whereas upon notification by Rachel, the city's bank returned the check to the bank that cashed the fraudulent check, and the city's funds have been returned. And whereas as a direct result of Rachel's thoroughness, diligence, taxpayers' funds have been restored to the city, has added the payee verification to the positive pay file, and we'll be moving towards implementing more ACH payments for our vendors to prevent this type of fraud in the future. Therefore, I, Jim Kushner, Mayor of the City of Warrensburg, along with the members of the City Council of Warrensburg, would like to thank Rachel Denfeld for her dedicated service to the City of Warrensburg and recognize the critical role and significant contributions in the excellent performance of her profession.
Thank you.
Pardon me?
Can I get a picture of all three of you? We've never been in a picture together, Jerry.
Yeah,
Rachel, and this is yours.
Oh, thank you very much.
Everybody got it?
Can you go in the middle? You got in the
I
middle?
gotta move. I'm getting told to move.
Thank you.
Thank you. Two valuable employees of all the valuable employees here that have done some great work lately. Okay. Next, we have first and second reading of ordinances, 6.1. First and second reading of an ordinance authorizing the city manager or their designee to create and implement a new residential sidewalk improvement program. Presented by Mr. Enrico.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So before you tonight is an item for first and second reading. It's kind of the culmination of all the discussions that we've had about the new sidewalk improvement program. So the attachments, one was a red line version and one was the clean one. I felt that it was good form for you to kind of see what was changed. That was made for not only transparency, but also for clarity for the general expectations for the new program. Materially, everything pretty much stayed the same. I just kind of tweaked it so it made more sense as to what the expectations were. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
I have no question, but I applaud your work on this
Oh, thank you.
and those are your staff.
Thank you.
Rachel's.
Mhm.
I think it's a great deal. Make a lot of difference in how we attack the sidewalks and stuff. You did a lot of hard work. Other than that, any other questions, comments? Then move for a motion, please.
Move to pass that ordinance to second reading by title.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner,
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager or their designee to create and implement a new residential sidewalk improvement program. This would be for adoption or rejection. Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
6.2. First and second reading of an ordinance vacating a portion of West Pine Street and approving the minor plat of Evergy Substation, a subdivision in the city of Warrensburg, Missouri, located at 300 West Pine.
Well, it's been 2 years in the making, but we are here this evening with our last legislative action for this project at the corner, southwest corner of Warren and Pine Street at 300 West Pine. This property has been rezoned. There's a conditional use permit on it. There's a variance, a multi-part variance, and now we have a minor plat. So with this plat, they will combine all of the properties, the three the city formerly owned, those have been sold to Evergy, and the property they originally owned will be combined into one large lot. That lot will then be used for a substation. The city has requested several changes, and some of those, they were made, and some of them prompted additional follow-up changes. So on the ordinance, where we recommend approval of the ordinance, there are a couple actions there. The first, section 1 does vacate a portion of West Pine Street. So they will maintain a 30-foot right-of-way from the center line of the built street south to their property lines. So that half, that would meet our collector standard. But from that point on south, there's some additional right-of-way to the original lot lines, and that is the portion that's being vacated. So we have got number 7 in section 2, which is a condition of approval, that they showed that vacated right-of-way, that they put a hatch pattern on that to make that more obvious to most users and readers of the plat of what is being vacated. So section 1 does the vacate. Section 2 are the conditions of approval. Planning and Zoning Commission considered this item at their meeting last week, recommended approval with the first 6 of those conditions. Staff has added number 7 with the writing of this ordinance. At this point, staff would recommend approval. It is consistent with our adopted plans and goals, and Planning and Zoning Commission has recommended approval. Be happy to answer any questions. My understanding is that they have not applied for their building permit yet, but this is the last action prior to that step. And so we do anticipate that they will apply for that in the coming months.
And this is for all the properties on the south side of Pine Street, correct? It does not incorporate the present substation into this plat.
It is only on the south side. Yes,
Okay.
yes. The stuff on the north side of Pine Street is not a part of this plat.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Anybody, other questions? And we need a motion.
Move to pass said ordinance to second reading by title.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes.
An ordinance vacating a portion of West Pine Street and approving the minor plat of Evergy Substation, a subdivision in the city of Warrensburg, Missouri, located at 300 West Pine Street. This would be for adoption or rejection. Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Section 7. Other business, resolution of the city, resolution of the council of the city of Warrensburg, Missouri, accepting a proposal prepared by Mike Keith Insurance for property liability, terrorism, and cyber insurance for 2023, which will be much cheaper. Thank you, Gary.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
So we did get our bid from the Mike Keith Insurance Company. We did go out for bid with also another insurance company who was unable to give us that bid at this point in time due to our not knowing the actual replacement value of several of our park buildings. And so we'll be working on that for next year. But this was an excellent bid for us. As you know, cybersecurity went down. And so we went down there. We had an overall increase of $48,273 over last year. That is particularly, it's a 12.9% annual increase. But that is particularly because we did update the value to replace the main buildings that are owned by the city. So City Hall, Station Number 2, the police department, and this building, we updated all of those based upon information that we got from other cities that are building like a new fire station and how much that is per square foot, which is, we were at $200 and some per square foot, and it's $470 per square foot. So that would cause an increase in our rates. And so it was all very explainable when you looked at all the buildings that we updated their actual replacement cost for. And then the fire pack went up by the 5,540, but we have some, all of our new radios and computer equipment that is in, some of it's in the station and then some of it's actually on the trucks and on personnel. So those two things were very understandable to us based on what we were asking them to actually insure. And the gentleman from Mike Keith, Mr. Mike Keith and Christian are here if you have any other questions. But we do recommend that you pass the resolution and that we go with Mike Keith Insurance for our property liability, terrorism, and cybersecurity. And the terrorism we have had before, but it wasn't pointed out. So I just wanted to mention that's only $548. $458 is the cost for the terrorism coverage, which seems pretty good. So, do you have any questions?
Nope. Okay, then we need a motion.
Move to pass said resolution.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes. 7.2, the resolution stating a resolution of the city of Warrensburg, Missouri, stating intent to seek funding through the Community Development Block Grant Program and authorizing the city manager or their designee to pursue activities in an attempt to secure funding. Mr. Enrico.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, this is kind of the a culmination coming to an end of the preliminary engineering and other grant bureaucracy kind of involved with this. I will state that I'm very, very pleased with the service provided by RPC and also engineering surveys and services. They've gone above and beyond, in my opinion, and in assisting with this matter. We feel very confident and strong in the application that it could withstand the scrutiny that it would take. This is a project of merit. And we'll be able to ask for $350,000. And so some of the work that went into this was engaging with other taxing jurisdictions such as the county and the school district and asking for funding with this project. Those discussions are still ongoing. So hopefully in the future, one or both would be funding partners in this project to demonstrate that it is a community project. And we also had taken survey shots to figure out where a lot of the stormwater is going in order to capture more properties. And so that was an idea provided by RPC. Again, kind of showing the creativity and innovation that goes into making a strong application. So as we know that we've been denied grants in the past. So hopefully with this one, we can keep. So I will ask if Chris or Norm have anything to say, but I definitely have appreciated all of their assistance so far.
Questions, concerns? Sounds like a plan.
Awesome. Thank you.
Need a
Move to
motion.
pass said resolution. Did I do it right? Okay, yes,
Osborne,
yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes. 7.3, Amendment 3, recreational marijuana land use and impacts discussion.
So on November 8th, the citizens of Missouri passed the Amendment 3, which opens up a recreational marijuana within the state of Missouri. And from an ordinance standpoint, from a state law standpoint, what they're doing is taking your existing medical marijuana facilities and allowing them the first opportunity to convert that license to a comprehensive facility license. So as we walk through some ordinance changes in the next few months, when you hear the word comprehensive facility, think recreational. But it could include medical also, depending on how they do their licensing for each individual facility. You'll also hear the term micro enterprise facility. So a micro enterprise dispensary or manufactured medical marijuana manufacturing facility. From a land use standpoint, that is not referring to the size of the dispensary, the square footage or the land use size. That's talking about the ownership of that facility. And so the micro enterprise facilities have a list of qualifications for owners to be licensed to operate those facilities in particular. And what they're hoping to do with that is to get the little guy into the business and not just the large corporate marijuana industries that have come to Missouri with our medical system. So they're hoping, so the micro enterprise is not the size of the facility, it's the ownership of the facility, it being a smaller player in the cannabis world. So since it's passed, I've had quite a few people ask questions. What does that mean for Warrensburg? What are we going to do? So we wanted to provide an opportunity. We did this with Planning and Zoning Commission last week and with City Council this week to have a discussion to let you know staff's intent, and so that you can let me know if you have a different intent as we go forward to amend our local ordinances to, at a minimum, be consistent with the state law, and if we continue on the path we're on with our medical, to be a little more restrictive than the state has been with their medical. So when we, as a community, adopted the ordinances for regulating medical marijuana facilities in the city of Warrensburg, we did that with an eye towards probably before too long, those will be recreational. And we have seen that happen within just a few years' time. At that time, they were adopted, given the policies and priorities of the city. At that time, the council adopted, upon staff's recommendation, more strict buffer and distance requirements than what the state required with their laws. And I've outlined in the packet specifically what we did in addition to what the state required. And those are at the top of the second page of the staff report. So at a minimum, going forward, the city needs to amend its ordinances to include those new definitions for comprehensive facilities and for the micro enterprise facilities. Staff is still very comfortable allowing them in the same types of districts and in the same manner in those districts as we have allowed the medical. And I included a copy of your existing regulation in the packet, but you'll see a table in there that shows, we don't allow any of these facilities in an R1, R2, R3, R4, or our mobile home districts. But we do start to allow some of them zoned by right in our commercial districts and others in our industrial district. The only one that we required a conditional use permit on, as opposed to being zoned by right, if you have a cultivation facility and a portion of it or any of it is outdoors, so being grown in the outdoors, then that requires a conditional use permit. If it's a fully interior cultivation facility, it's all inside a building, that does not require a conditional use permit. That would be zoned by right. So we think our place and manner restrictions are still very appropriate for the recreational facilities that could come into our community. And we would not recommend any changes to that. So at a minimum, we're looking at changing our definitions. If there are other changes that the council would like to consider, we would like to know that now as we're drafting it. So hopefully we can do all of this at one time. The Planning and Zoning Commission discussed this at their meeting last week and felt that they would be comfortable keeping the regulations that we have at this time and not making any changes to the buffer or the distance requirements. They had a good discussion around, and I try to summarize this in the staff report, they had a good discussion around our downtown district and should we change that liquor by the drink requirement so that it would allow some of those sites in the downtown to then qualify for placement of a facility. But the state's restriction of 1,000 feet from a church, and given how many churches you have in your downtown, it's going to knock out most all of those properties anyway. So it's not our liquor by the drink requirement that is eliminating those sites. It's your distance from a church. And that's a state requirement. We don't change, we can't change. So that was the bulk of their discussion. They did show a willingness to change in the future if there was a specific request come forward, that they would be willing to consider a change to the ordinance at that time.
So how much more strict are we than what the state requirements are? I couldn't really.
So if you look at the staff report on the top of the second page, where I've listed 1 through 4, those are in addition to, those are our requirements. Those are not the state's requirements. So no marijuana related use to be operated or maintained on any portion of a lot where any portion of the lot is within 100 feet of a residentially zoned district or a public park. A facility must be at least 500 feet from any business licensed as an adult entertainment business, must be at least 250 feet from any establishment licensed to sell liquor by the drink, and must be at least 500 feet from any other marijuana related use. So those are our local additions to, in addition to what the state required. We do, as stated in our existing ordinance, we measure that in the same manner that the state requires their distances to be measured. So we use the same scheme for measuring, and the state outlines that very at length in their state code of their code of state regulations, and it was mirror image in Amendment 3. And so we've adopted it as well.
But these are like, well, the state has theirs and then this is on top of what the state.
Yes.
Right. And so the staff hasn't thought about, since it's been passed as recreational, to just reduce down to what the state minimum is on the.
So the state minimum is,
I mean, to take away these additional.
The discussion around those additional restrictions at the time was with an eye towards recreational, and the studies and information that talked about potential additive effects of cannabis and alcohol together. And so the thought was to maintain a separation between those uses, so that if there were an inclination for someone to be abusing those substances in combination, that would be more difficult if they were separated.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah.
And so that
in
was more of a
theory,
concern with
yeah.
recreational than with medical. frankly.
In theory, I mean, we would hope that that wouldn't happen, but in reality, I think if they're gonna do it, they're gonna partake in it, whether we have those restrictions or not, so.
But as Barbara said, I mean, in planning and zoning the other night, we discussed that if there was a particular applicant or something that with a particular location and need or something, that would be something we would discuss and be willing to make amends. But we just felt what we had in place was good. And if we need to make changes in the future, we will, but not to get into it now.
so the state's only requirement, and I'll read that to you because it's short. That it be 1,000 feet from a then existing elementary or secondary school, child daycare center, or church.
And yeah, and I totally agree with those. I'm just worried that even looking at this, because if a prospective business wanted to come in and they see these additional restrictions, it might deter them from even wanting to look at Warrensburg for a possible site for their facility.
Kristen and I get. I mean, some months we don't get any. I'd say on average, we average about 1 to 2 a month. Inquiries where we run a property. I'll say that when they ask us to run them, they typically already know, they're well aware of our ordinances. And they're asking us to confirm what they suspect. And so, the last organization we were running numbers for, we probably ran 5 different properties, and I think 2 of them qualified. So we do, and these were properties that were for sale or for rent. They weren't, wishes and dreams. They were looking at real MLS listings. So there are properties that qualify.
There was a map that was created at the time.
Yeah, there was the map created at the time. We have updated, you have to update it pretty much every time you get a new liquor license season. And with new schools, we have to update it pretty frequently. So we do have a layer in our GIS system that we run those properties through.
We did discuss if that would, hinder somebody from coming to Warrensburg, but I thought it was interesting, Barbara. We're in a region or a district, and you said there's how many?
They're allowing 24 licenses for dispensaries, 24 licenses within the 8th congressional district. And so the 4th congressional district, and there's 8 counties. So it's not like Oklahoma where we got 20 of these. We may stand to get our fair share, which is 2 or 3. We're competing with every other town in our district.
And so the other towns, in our district, do they have these additional restrictions to the state minimum?
I don't know what their specific restrictions are now.
Because that's like one of my concerns is that, people that's gonna partake in this are gonna go to where they're at. And so if we're missing out on opportunities, then we're also missing out on revenue as well. So.
Yeah, we discussed that, obviously revenue, and again, we would be willing to open that up. Somebody actually, an applicant came in. It was also the downtown's pretty much precluded by about a half a dozen churches located either downtown or on the perimeter of downtown.
It's the state's restrictions that block them from coming
Yeah.
downtown, not ours.
Yeah, and not just downtown, I just mean. Just the additional restrictions we have may hinder them from a lot of places that if we didn't have those might be more available to them. Like you said, you have applicants ask you about different locations, but based on our restrictions, they're not able to utilize those buildings. And I'm just worried that will they have the additional information that we would take into consideration or are we just saying to them, these are the only buildings you can use and that's it? Do they know they have the option to say, well, we want to use this building, can you take it to council or?
We, of the ones that we ran with this last group, there was one that they came back to us and asked if they could apply for a variance for that restriction requirement. We talked to them about that process and so certainly they know that process is available to them to apply. If there's a willingness to change the ordinance, staff would steer them towards that solution rather than a variance. Changing the ordinance is faster as well. The standard for granting a variance is that you've been denied all reasonable use of the property, and that's not going to be the case with the property that they were looking at. It has been used for other things for many years. Could be used for that again. So a variance would not likely be successful. And so we would steer them towards the ordinance change instead.
I understand that there are some concerns about having facilities at certain locations, but I also think sometimes that the ordinance that we put in place may deter
Mhm.
prospective
Well, that could happen with anything, but
companies
yeah.
coming in.
And this may or may not help people, at least with on the council on page 9 in this week's review. There's a very comprehensive description of what the new law is and what it does and goes again, explains a whole lot. It does not, of course, do anything with the local stuff, but it's made a lot of difference to me of reading through it to see what some of the terms that they dreamed up to call micro something is not what you would anticipate. As far as the locations, right now, it's just a variance. What if Joe Blow wanted to move into a building that's 450 feet away from a liquor establishment? What are their options?
They're good.
Well,
Restrictions only
from that
250.
one, they'd be fine because they only have to be 250.
250, it's 200 feet, I'm sorry.
So if they were 200 feet away, in the manner which the state requires us to measure, then we would give them the option of the variance or coming and asking for an ordinance, bringing an ordinance change forward for council.
Okay,
I think they would choose the ordinance change because that's probably at most a 60-day process, much more likely a 30 to 45-day process, where a variance is typically a 90-day process.
and we don't anticipate any of these happening. In realism, we don't anticipate anybody's gonna do this unless they secure a license, correct? Do they have to do both of the licensing and,
They have to get a state license, and typically to get a state license at some points in the past, they have had to have an email or a letter stating that the location meets the local requirements.
okay,
Not everything that has been applied for at the state has gotten such a letter or email from the city, and they have gotten licensed. So I don't know how strict the state is on requiring that local consent.
okay. Any other questions, concerns? This is just open for discussion right now, correct?
It is for discussion if you want to give us direction, if there's other changes you'd like to see. Otherwise, we will bring forward an ordinance in January, which is the definition changes. If you want more than that, I would prefer to know that tonight. But it's at your pleasure.
Did you say there's a map of the current establishments that's available for use for this purpose?
There's not a public map. There is a layer in our GIS where we have shown the buffers for each of these. Some of them, like number 1, that's not easily drawn as a buffer. So it's easier to show 2, 3, 4 and the 1,000 foot from the state. That map we could bring forward.
And how difficult would it be to recreate them without our additional restrictions?
If all you wanted to see was the 1,000 foot between any school, child, daycare center, church, or public library?
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry, not public library.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can easily do that.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see the two for compare and contrast.
Anybody else have any brothers before? Okay,
Thank you.
parents is not listed. I don't think there was anybody back there. Nope. Empty, saved another piece of paper. Miscellaneous matters from the mayor or council.
I actually have a question, but I don't need an answer tonight to Chief Munsterman. I noticed the college had posted the prohibition of marijuana use on campus because it's federal law. It says students under 21 and campus personnel, that kind of thing. I saw that today. I read about that. And again, not an answer tonight, but maybe that's something to look into, because I don't know how we police that with the connection with UCM campus police and.
I don't believe they allow smoking period on campus.
Well, they also have restrictions of under the influence, smoking, possession, things like that. And I'm just curious how the city and the college will.
So those would be administrative conduct related regulations, similar to many of their other student conduct regulations. So violations would have to be dealt with through their student conduct process. They don't adopt quote unquote ordinances that we would issue tickets for. Those policies would strictly be up to them to enforce.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out, because it looks like it says federal law, which is what they're following on campus, which is more criminal. And that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, so that would be purely administrative between them, their faculty and staff and their students. We would have nothing to do with enforcement of that policy. If that answers your question.
It does right now. There may be something new coming up as I read this, but I was just curious about the coordination between the city and the college on this.
Yeah, I need to meet with Chief Brinkley in reference to this anyway. This is gonna be interesting to move forward as far as what kind of ordinances we actually put in place in reference to smoke marijuana in public. What's that gonna entail, right?
And under 21. The same, so thank you.
Another one of the big changes in the world. Went to the city's lunch last week. It was awesome. I think the police were cheating on the contest, but you know.
I didn't know it.
Other than that, it's been a great year. Most to the point, everybody's been doing good. We've been doing good. I appreciate everybody's hard work. I do have one question though, and inquiring minds want to know question, and this is about as good a place to ask as any. Do you have a deer count yet?
We do not. I was actually gonna send a note to Carrie. We had said that we would send a survey out at the end of the season to get a total. But we were thinking about possibly sending a note kind of midway through, just to see where everyone was at.
I've heard sheer rumor, but that 3 or 4 of the guys have gotten almost 15 so far collectively. And that the university is a pain in the butt to hunt on.
I will share with you, we have gotten several, we've gotten a handful of concerns about having the parks closed for the full 6-week duration. We have shared with them, thank you for that feedback. This is our first year. And we are, taking all of this into consideration if we decide to do this next year. One of the concerns that the gentleman had was that there's plenty of public land out there that's available for this recreational use. And just sharing with him again, there was more to this than just that recreational opportunity. This truly is to manage our deer population. So
That's what I've been telling people. I've had a couple people not complain, but raise concern. Other than that, I've not heard anything horrendously bad. It's just the couple of things that people have talked to me about have been on the university, and refer them to lack of knowing who else, the university police, because they're strict. You have to check in every deer, all sorts of stupid things. And I'm like, thank you very much for your input. And if you would contact these people, because they've got a different set of roles than we have.
Yeah, I think as we do hear those, comments from, folks, I do think it's important to keep in mind that we were going to participate in that level of checking in. Until, the university realized they wouldn't have any students here to do that research work for them. While our hunt was going on. So I think it's important for us to take those comments into consideration. If we were to consider doing something like that next year.
Well, I just kind of seeing where it's at for right now. Had some people asking, but nothing bad. So.
Well, I had a resident from over at Mar Park reach out to me saying that there are people playing the frisbee golf in the park. Even though it's closed, they were concerned about the arrows traveling 150 yards, and I shared with them that it was 150 feet or 50 yards. They also had a concern about the size of the signs.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Okay.
I think something else for us to take into consideration, Missouri Department of Conservation did share that they don't necessarily close their parks when they have the managed deer hunt going on, and we debated quite a bit about whether we would close the parks or not, or if we would allow for those two things, those two recreational activities to exist at the same, not necessarily the same time. Because the deer hunt usually happens at dawn and dusk, and frisbee golf is usually happening during daylight hours.
Yes, I don't think many of the frisbee golf players are up at dawn.
I'll admit, I was one that was pushing for the parks to be closed, but I would like a part of that survey at the end to find out exactly what their time frame is, so that it better gauge if we can possibly just close them for that period of time, or or not close them at all. So
I've talked to one person that's a good friend of mine that participates in one up north of Kansas City. And he said they extensively advertise that there'll be hunters there. And he said in all the group that he hunts with, there has never been a report. They all sit around and talk, and there's never been a report of a near miss. And most all of their hunters, they'll say, yeah, if somebody's wandering around, A, I'm not going to be hunting because there's not going to be deer there, and B, I'm not going to shoot when it's a concern, whether it's the deer or a person. So, but they don't close whatever park he goes to. They never close it either. It's just, it's highly advertised and signed that you are there, and by entering it, it's at your own, not at your own risk, but your own awareness of what's going on. Because saying at your own risk, correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, that leads you to be maybe no of risk, or some people think.
You are correct that things become more muddy.
Yes.
When you overlay those uses.
Yeah, what they have done is say, this is what's going on. Please have a heightened awareness, especially during these times. And so, I don't know. It's our first year. We'll see what happens next year.
Yeah, Danielle, so how do we know if this becomes a success, or if we need to do another next year? Do we do a survey in the spring or something? Or?
Yeah, so we will, we'll do a survey. We'll figure out how many deer were harvested. Our population was such that there's, even with the number that Mayor Kushner just shared, that's probably not enough for us to not need to do it next year. Because deer double in population every year. That was one of the statistics that MDC shared with us. So, but we will, we'll kind of figure out how many we got this year, what our population was. The drone survey that we did last year was very reasonable in cost, so we might look at doing that again. Well, I don't want to misquote, but it was less than $1,000. So it might be worth it just to do another drone survey to get that counted.
And when you send out the survey, I think it would be helpful to ask for a ballpark date of when they harvested the deer. And I think it's likely that we're gonna find that most of them were harvested early, you know, like in the first week or so. And so I think a happy medium would be close the park, avoid interactions, take, you know, out of respect for the hunter. It's very frustrating to show up and then you got up at 0 dark 30, hiked in there, sat down, and then an hour, somebody walks by and kind of blows your whole hunt. So that's just frustrating. It wouldn't be very popular, but I think we could absolutely shorten the time frame down to like 10 days, 10 to 14 days, and incorporate 2 weekends, which that's what they do for gun season, have for years. And so I think that'd be a good trade-off to where we don't shut the parks down for over a month, but we still, you know, kill 90% of the deer that we did the previous year because they harvested them, you know, at that first week or two, and then it just kind of drug on after that.
Hunter number wise, we only selected so many. Is that the option next year to increase those numbers? Or would they be overlapping each other too much as a concern? Because I mean, I'm just saying if we reduce the amount of time and we have
Yeah.
twice as many hunters, maybe we'll end up with the same number, if not higher than what we have this year.
I think there's I think there's a couple of different things that we can consider here. One, do we need to, so like I've driven by some of the parks and trying to hit those morning and dusk hours, and I've really only noticed 1 or 2 trucks at a time. So it's interesting, they all did exchange phone numbers, so I don't know if they're coordinating their schedules amongst themselves as well. So I think that that's something to consider. Our local or our resident hunters, if you will, the hunters who work for the city that helped us kind of put together this program, they felt very strongly about limiting that number. And so I think that that is something we can ask the hunters. Did you feel crowded? Did you feel as you had adequate space to hunt? Did you feel like there was too much overlap? So I do think that that's a good question for us to ask them in our survey as well.
Right.
And I know they're all gonna be very happy to help to provide their feedback.
And I just didn't know if there was.
Do you remember how many applied and then how many we granted ballpark?
Yes,
How many
so
were turned away?
we actually ended up only getting about 38 or 39 that applied. We had 33 spots. We ended up honoring everyone who applied. So we had a couple folks who dropped out because they weren't old enough. Family things came up. I'm not gonna be able to get it done. I'm not gonna be
Have
around.
an alternate to be able to reach out.
And so we ended up going ahead and squeezing in those couple extras. So we did not have to turn anyone away. That being said, I think something else that we could look into, because we did have a lot of interest of folks who live just outside of Warrensburg city limits who are also interested. So if we wanted to expand that opportunity outside of our city limits, I think there's folks who welcome that.
Between
One of the
the,
other,
go ahead.
one of the other suggestions that came from one of the hunters was to have a managed hunt that was open to disabled veterans. And you know, he said like before we open it up for all of our hunters, like there would be a weekend for disabled veterans, and he would be happy to help sponsor that through some organizations that he works with. So that came up. They also had other ideas of maybe we should do a youth hunt, because that was one thing we did turn away anyone under the age of 18. There was another one who said, maybe we should do just a ladies hunt. So we only had two women who applied. So maybe if we did a designated, one park is designated to all ladies, there's lots of different ways that we can massage this to achieve anything, any kind of goals that we.
Cool.
Are there any additional city-owned lands that we didn't use this year that we might possibly look into next year? I mean, you don't.
I
have
don't
that
think,
many.
yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
The properties that we did not include were because of their proximity, to residential areas or schools or, you know, those.
Talked about probably not Shepherd Park or Grover Park, so.
Yeah,
I just didn't know like migration, you know,
Yeah.
how smart these animals are if they start to get out of this area.
2 more in my
So,
neighborhood
yeah,
tonight.
so, yeah. Well, I did the other
the
night
folks who were over
too.
the West Soccer. field to
Taunting
step
you,
up their
huh?
game.
They were taunting you tonight.
I just didn't know if they know they're gonna end up being hunted in this area every year if they start to migrate to different locations, and then we'll have to look at that too.
Okay,
Just think.
I think it's going really smooth, though. I've been really amazed at how little, yep.
all right. Anything else from the council? If not. Miscellaneous matters from the council, letter of support. From the Missouri Department of Economic Development. For local tourism and asset development grant application submitted by Ms. Marcy.
So before you have, Mayor, before you have plea for a letter of support. WCB is applying for DED's Local Tourism Asset Development Grant. It is funded by ARPA funds. There is quite a bit to this application. One of the requirements is to have letters of support from the city, county representatives, state representatives, and state senator in the district. We are Johnson County. We represent all of Johnson County. We have secured all of those. So we are hopeful that we will have the letter of the support from the city tomorrow morning. So we will be able to get that grant application submitted. The grant is for the renovation of 205 North Holden. The minimum we can apply for is $250,000. The bids for the renovation project were open and it was awarded to King Construction for $341,000, including the purchase of the property, which we were lucky to be able to include that. And with the total budget, we were able to, it was over a $500,000 project. It is a reimbursement grant. So we're very, very hopeful that we will be able to secure this grant to help with the renovations. And that'll open up more opportunities for us to be able to do some other things that we want to do in the visitor center, such as displays and furniture, technology. So we're very hopeful for this grant. Are there any questions? We have secured letters. I did mention state rep, county, and we've also included UCM, Warrensburg Main Street, Johnson County Economic Development, Twisters, and Johnson County Historical Society.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else from the council? Okay, Director of Finance. The Marcella Show.
So, good evening, Mayor and Council. The Director of Finance report includes a recap of everything that had been posted for the month of October and November. So we've collected, again, we're still seeing sales tax dollars higher than what we had seen this time last year, which is a good sign. They're definitely meeting budget at this point in time. The departments are doing a great job in managing their expenditure budgets. And so as long as we can continue to maintain that, we'll at least have revenues meeting our expenditures for the year going forward. Councilman Euler had asked about the lodging tax. So we're putting together a plan to see what our options are, what our code says specifically. And once we have a plan put together on some action steps, then that report will be brought to you in the first quarter of 23, as we start calendar year 23. Talks about audit is happening the 19th of December to have an audit report presented in February to council to show how well we did in 22. And going forward, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have the capability to find out what a certain industry is bringing into the city as far as, well, I was thinking back to the recreational use of marijuana dispensaries. Is there any way that we could calculate how much that brings into the city in sales tax?
No,
No.
no, because you only have one business. It would be illegal for the city to reveal the numbers.
Oh, okay, well, I was just trying to.
And once you have 16 entities where you can say this is overall, like I can pull
Overall,
all the
okay.
restaurant entities together possibly, but it's all the restaurants, but when it's just one,
Then
then
it's,
it's
Gotcha.
business disclosure, and so that would violate their privacy.
I'm just trying to look at it from different angles.
It's actually criminal.
Criminal, yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
Well, I don't want us to do that. I'm just trying to gather enough information to make an informed decision on. Feel about things, so yeah. So, I didn't know if there's any way to figure out how much revenue that generates.
Marcella, we did get a note from MML or one of our other groups, and they did estimate how much they were expecting a business to bring in per community, didn't they?
Was it per community or per congressional? Was
Okay,
it?
let us do a little bit of research
Yeah.
on that. I think someone has extrapolated some numbers, and so we might be able to do that for you.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. City manager report. And staff.
Anything they'd like to share?
Huh?
Evening, Mayor, Council, just wanted to inform you, we'll probably be bringing a life-saving award to a lady today, working with utilities. She located a 4-month-old in the backyard of 200, I believe, Johnson, 200 in the block of 200 block of Johnson Drive, I believe. 2-month or 4-month-old was left there, purple. Was in bad shape. We arrived and was able to get ambulance there and get the baby transported to the hospital immediately. Mother ended up arriving without going into too much information for the investigation. She was taken into custody in reference to it, but the baby is alive and doing okay at this time. But the utility worker ended up calling us to that address and probably save that child's life. So,
Awesome.
thanks.
Just get to see each other again for the end of the year and not forget for next year. The Missouri Fire Safety Education Commission manages money that's brought in every year through fireworks sale. That money's reallocated to firefighter training. So they award contracts and then fire departments are able to apply for a lot of those classes. We've had hit or miss luck in the past. A lot of it comes down to some politics. We were able this year to we applied for several classes and then accidentally got quite a few of them. So we were looking about 8 courses over the next several months coming in. I tell you all that story. We hosted our first class this past Saturday in this very room. We had about 7 departments represented from around the area. So a good showcase for the city of Warrensburg Fire Department. And it was a good training program. Then also this evening, Division Chief of Training, Matt Soares, on a fire engineering national podcast this evening, talking a little bit about that course and the department. So some neat movement and strides across the state and the nation, and trying to highlight the department and the things that we're doing here. So thank you.
Evening, Mayor, members of the council. This past week, the community center was closed for the annual maintenance week that we have. There's a lot of painting and repairs that were necessary for the facility. Also, last week, the power cleaning was done to the floor of the pool surfaces as well as patching. Today, they completed the first painting of the primer coat. And then that dries and then they finish the final paint. They should finish by the end of the week. It then takes a cure time after that. And then after it's completely cured, the filling will start. And we worked with Midwest Public Pools in regards to some of the things we'll need to go through to get the pool back up and going. But we're still moving forward right now on target for that after the first year opening. So that's the update right now.
I don't have a whole lot to add other than with the Christmas party that we had and all the awards that were given out for people's time with the city. I did want to say that, especially as we wrap up this year, how much I have appreciated working here. It's an awesome organization, and if it were possible to buy stock with the city of Warrensburg, now would be the time to do it. It's a wonderful organization, good staff, and a great management team. So that's really all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barbara? You have any more, Marcy? And you?
Just want to tell everyone, happy holidays. Thanks for a great 2022, and we will see you in January.
And you're gonna be gone and he's gonna be in charge? Soon?
Soon, yes.
Okay.
Enrique's like, but don't put that out there because last time she.
Sideways.
Yeah.
I don't want Andy to have to stake out my house. If everyone listening on the Zoom call.
Since this is my first year on council, we're not having any more council meetings this month.
I need you for another 20 minutes for a closed session, but
Okay.
I think we'll be wrapped up for
So-
this year.
Okay, thank you.
Happy holidays then.
Okay, and closed session, vote to close part of this meeting pursuant to section 610 021 of the revised statutes of Missouri relating to one, legal actions, causes of action or litigation involving a public governmental body and any confidential or privileged communications between a public government body or its representatives and its attorneys. Need a vote. Motion.
Move to go to closed session.
Thank you. Osborne,
It's one of the easiest ones.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yeah.
Thank you.